Hello and welcome to episode 316 of the Stacey West podcast. My name's Gary and I know that I have just made Jack Mulhall's run all the more better. Whether the next statement will or not, I don't know, but I am joined by Mr. Chris Lamming. How are you, my friend?
Hello. I'm all right. I had a lovely weekend. How are you?
I've got a mouse in the kitchen.
Yes, there's some irony involved with that,
There is some irony in that. I didn't even invite it in or anything. My mum come over for dinner today and we were just literally sat at the table having dinner and I saw this massive black thing run across the kitchen floor, and I have a radar for this sort of thing because it might be a spider. And then it wasn't, it was a mouse. And obviously we have a couple of days away in Whitby planned. So at the moment we've got a freeloader moved in for a couple of days. So yeah, I'm not particularly happy about that. But other than that, I am very good. Thank you for asking. I did a bit of a run this morning as well because I run.
You run?
It nearly killed me, to be honest. Still not up to 5k at the minute, half an hour. And I got caught on the main road with motorbikes coming the other way. And it was really uncomfortable. And I had flashbacks to our walk. So yeah, not good. But a positive performance. Let's move straight into football.
Let's just talk about football, shall we? Yeah. Who likes small talk anyway?
At the beginning of a podcast. So we had a decent performance yesterday, which I think made things all the better. I got up this morning and had to write it up to really sum it all up. I think it was just an exciting game of football without anything to really get excited about. Because in terms of chances, there's a couple that we'll talk about, but they weren't clear cut. It wasn't scintillating, but it was just a good afternoon's football, wasn't it, all round?
It was. Yeah, I think there's two decent teams on show yesterday. Two teams who I think we discussed Peterborough and us before, of course, and I think this is probably the most complete squad we've had for a long time. Peterborough maybe haven't quite got the big names, maybe, or established big names that they've had before. They're maybe slightly in a bit of a transition, but they're still a really, really good side at this level. I just thought it was two good teams that knew what they were trying to do, that were pretty committed to their principles. And honestly, I think a draw was a fair result at the end of the day. I think we could have had 3. I think there were 3 points there for us. But on the whole, I don't think there's any Lincoln City fans going home from London Road yesterday disappointed at a point away at Peterborough. First point we've had for a long time, of course.
Yeah, at Peterborough, not the first point we've had away for a long time. We've obviously had.
I meant at Peterborough, yes, of course.
We've had points. 16. Yeah, we've had at least points away from home ever since New Year's Day, which is phenomenal, and we'll touch on that record. So just for those who are watching or listening, what we are going to do is we're going to go around all of the incidents for the game. We're going to break it down, have a chat. Then Chris is going to get some stats out, which you can listen to if you want to and you're struggling to sleep later on. And then we'll have an advert break, and then we're going to discuss some of the slightly more or uncomfortable elements of the afternoon, because whilst everything was good on the field, I don't think the same can be said off the field, and I think it's pertinent to discuss that. Ben, if you're listening, pertinent is very similar to the word important, and if you don't know what that means, just grab a dictionary. Right, shall we move on? Sorry, I actually probably missed doing a podcast with Ben a little bit, because it's hard to be condescending to somebody that beat me 3 weeks in a row on the fantasy football. Oh, but not 4 weeks in a row.
Well, I did beat you 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah,
so that's the fact.
Not 4 weeks in a row. No. But anyone who is mildly interested, whatever. Anyone who's mildly interested in the fantasy football, we will do our fantasy football video on Wednesday evening. We've got Dean Gripton, football manager guru, coming on this time. But just to give you a little glimpse, I have already won, and I've still got my vice captain to play tomorrow night. So that's good news. More good news. Conor McGrandle's returning to the starting lineup, but probably the headline change, because the other two were not changes, they were headline not changes, in Jova Makama keeping his place over Bailey Cadamartri, and Dom Jeffries, I thought, surprisingly keeping his place over Eric Ring, but he had a very good game. But the team selection was as expected, bar those two, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting that whenever a team gets announced at 2:00, there are so many possibilities now, aren't there? And we mentioned this in pre-season, but there are so many players in our team now that, so let's, for example, say JJ McKinnon started, or Eric Ring started at left wing back, or Bailey Cadamartri did start up front instead of Jovan Makama, we'd be absolutely fine with it, and we'd see the benefits in that. We certainly wouldn't see that as a massive step down in terms of the starting lineup. That just goes to show the strength that we have. It's so nice to have that kind of anticipation, I suppose, around who might actually be starting rather than who's missing out. So I wasn't surprised to see Dom Jeffries start. Personally, I think he hasn't done anything to justify being dropped from the starting lineup. Same for Jovan Makama, though I would have been happy with either of them not starting with Cadamartri or Ring as they came on later in the game. But the big one was Conor McGrandles, as you mentioned. Conor adds such a calming presence in the centre of the park, doesn't he? It absolutely baffles me that he didn't hardly get a kick for Charlton Athletic, because he's an outstanding League One central midfielder and really complements the other two that we have playing in there at the moment. So yeah, team selection was interesting, but I think because of our depth now, and we saw it halfway through the second half, which we'll get to, is, and you mentioned this before, it's not an 11-man game anymore. So as much as that's the team that is starting, there are so many other possibilities as to how the game will unfold and how the team will finish. So
quick question. When it comes to team selection, you said there Dom Jeffries hasn't done anything wrong to be dropped. Okay, I buy that. I get that. Do you think that's different for strikers? So like anywhere else on the field, you get your place, you hold on to your place, that's fine. As a striker, you don't have to do, in my opinion, anything wrong to be judged. If you don't score, you're not doing anything wrong. Jovan has done nothing wrong. But you've got Bailey Cadamartri come on loan from Sheffield Wednesday, big player for them last season, constant contact with Sheffield Wednesday, which we're going to talk about. Is it that Jovan could lose his space without doing anything wrong, which perhaps 9 other players on the field couldn't?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer straight away, to be honest. I think the answer is it depends, and it depends who the manager is as well, to be honest, because I think different managers would approach this in different ways. So there'll be some managers. Maybe Danny Cowley would fall into this a little bit, that maybe focus a little bit more on the opposition and maybe was a little bit more kind of horses for courses in regards to team selection. So, for example, if you're playing against a team that you want to dominate aerially, you probably start Freddie Draper, regardless of who else has performed well in the team. Whereas you have another manager's train of thought, which is if they've performed how I want them to, then it's harsh for them to miss out. I don't know which is correct, to be honest. I think a little bit of both might be, but I think it's a good point in that, particularly this season, with the amount of centre forwards that we have that have all got different qualities, I think that's the top end of your pitch. That's the part of your team which is going to be putting the most pressure on the opposition defence, and you want to be able to test that in multiple different ways, and you want to be able to exploit the weaknesses of your opposition. So I suppose the short answer to your question is, yeah, it probably is more likely at the top end of the pitch, even if someone's done nothing wrong as such. But yeah, I wasn't surprised to see Jovan start, personally.
I was. I thought he had a decent first half, but yeah, look, it was quite obvious from the off how this game was going to look. And we called it, to be fair. Peterborough were going to have lots of the ball. We were going to not press them particularly high, but we didn't want to go too far forward and leave spaces behind. We were going to try and hit them on a break. And I thought that the first 4 or 5 minutes, I was really uncomfortable, because it's like, Jesus Christ, we haven't had a kick. Yeah, it's like when you're playing your 4-year-old nephew on FIFA. Do you know what I mean? And you're just passing it around because you don't want to go up and score straight away and break his heart. That's what it felt like. And after their first opportunity, and it wasn't an opportunity, but like it was a corner or something like that, they've played it around a lot. They've got their corner. We finally got a touch. And it was only at that point I kind of settled down, because I've got in my head 4-0 a couple of years ago, 3-0 at our place. Do you know what I mean? Just constantly, Peterborough have actually been that side that are always better than us. Like when we play Derby, or when we play Ipswich, or when we play Sunderland, we've always got results against them in recent years where you go, that was a good result. We haven't beaten this lot, and still, to be fair, in what, 18 years, and they felt like a bogey team, and it was nice to literally get that first touch to kind of make me feel that we weren't just going to be overawed.
Yeah, we discussed this on Thursday, of course, when we previewed the game, and that we expected Peterborough to have a lot of the ball. We expected to kind of pretty unapologetically play out with very short passes in from deep areas and try and play through us. I thought that would play into our hands personally, and I think it did as the first half wore on. We get those first sort of 3 or 4 minutes. They did that. We had 2 or 3 kind of moments where I thought we was just about to nick it, but they did play through us. And then without creating anything particularly threatening, they got up the pitch. And that justifies it for them, of course. I was with you. I was a little bit concerned. Just thought, I really back our out of possession shape. I really back our ability to press, and they played through us for the first just couple of minutes. And I thought, oh no, this is a bad start. But then, yeah, like you said, we got a touch, we got a foothold in the game. And to be honest, Peterborough hardly had any real clear opportunities at all. Not going to overload with stats at all, certainly not yet. But their XG over the whole game was 0.91. And half of that came from one chance, which was a header in the first half that I can't even remember them having, to be honest. So they didn't really create a lot in terms of the way that Peterborough want to create. And that's because we were absolutely, particularly in the first half, outstanding without possession. I thought our out possession shape was utterly superb. Reminded me a lot of the Wigan away last season.
I mentioned that in my write-up, actually.
Just had a couple of obviously had a couple of goals in it. That was the only difference. But it was a really tactical game, and albeit not a huge number of real clear-cut chances, it was only one slip away, one misplaced pass away from a chance being created. It was you really had to be on it. It was a high-quality game of football with 2 really contrasting styles. But I was pleased after we got that first touch, as you mentioned, and we really got a foothold in the game, and we settled. And I felt we was quite in control. Even when they had the ball, I felt we was in control of the game quite a lot of it, particularly in that first half.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was an engrossing game of football without anything really happening, because the first instant really that we're going to talk about is our goal. Because as you say, there wasn't really an opportunity that I can remember of ours before that where I thought we were going to carve them open. What I think they looked a little bit shaky from the first couple of set pieces, but actually our set pieces weren't quite on point yesterday, and I think that's one of the areas where we really missed Pordy. There's 1 or 2 where it's him or often at the back stick, and we didn't seem to have that person at the back stick. I'm sure it was somebody's job, but a couple of our corners, it kind of felt like nobody had taken that job, and they were getting right over to the back, and then we're all going, oh, who's doing the Pordy job? And I'm sure that's not the case, obviously. And there's obviously another reason why we missed him a little bit further down the line. So I think we ended up getting a little bit of a foothold into the game, and it was really hard. It was like playing FIFA on world class. I keep going back to FIFA where it's pass, and you're struggling to get that ball, and then or legendary mode even, you get that ball, and finally it's like, right, can we do something with it? And what I felt was every time we got the ball, it looked like we might do something with it. And that was unlike the Peterborough of old, where you would get the ball and you would think that they've got the quality in certain key areas to actually stop that. So we began to not get as much in possession, but when we got the possession, I thought we looked really comfortable, and pretty much everything seemed to go through Ethan Erhahon as well. I saw you had your hand up like a school child there. So
yeah, I was just wanted to make a point. You said when we had the ball back, we looked comfortable. And also, we didn't feel as under threat as maybe previously. But it's because we won the ball back hard up the pitch. We didn't win the ball back in our own defensive third because we were, defending our own box. We had to do it a few times in the game, but not that often, really. The ball was primarily in Peterborough's third, and certainly in the middle part of the pitch. We won it back. Well, Peterborough lost the ball 66 times in the first 2/3 of the pitch. And for a team that completed something like 300 and 500 odd passes in the game, to lose it 66 times in those first 2/3 of the pitch, that's a lot. That's credit to us. And that's not them launching the ball on us winning a header, because they don't do that. They do play short, and they kind of a little bit like Michael Appleton in a way, isn't it? In that they'll do it no matter what. They'll stick to their principles in that regard. And I just thought, like I mentioned before, we were completely in control. Even when they had the ball in the areas of the pitch that we could be in control of. And when it went to certain parts, we were able to press as a unit and win it back. And even though we're going to touch on our goal in a moment, I think before that we had won it back 2 or 3 times, particularly off their goal kicks. That was a real kind of nice setup for us to be able to go really super high and stop them playing. And you almost see like an opposition goal kick as a offensive opportunity for us because of how both teams wanted to set up in that situation. And it was only like half a bounce or a little toe end away from it bouncing to us and us being able to get a shot away. But then when the goal came, it was, it actually was a period of really sustained possession by us high up the pitch as well, which is something that Peterborough, for all their possession, something they struggled to do throughout the game was to maintain possession high up the pitch. And we must have done it for what felt like 90 odd seconds or so, bar one clearance that came straight back to us.
It's funny you should say that. I actually remember a bit in the second half, right at the end of the second half in injury time, they got a corner or something. I remember thinking, God, that's actually a strange position for my neck to be in, looking back at our own goal, because actually after their goal onwards, it didn't really happen. But let me quote Charlie Beeston, who now he's over in Gibraltar, by the way, can actually watch the game in real time rather than sitting in the stadium listening to it and having to watch it back when he goes home. Excuse me. Charlie said, one of the greatest goals I've ever seen us score. That was beautiful. Chris then says, great goal. Charlie says, fantastic first half performance. It was a really good goal. And we'll take the incidents first because there's one or two players we need to pick up on, I think, through the course of the day. But it was nice football. It was patient attacking football, playing at times across the front of their area, looking for the space, looking for the break. A really nice cross from Dom Jeffries, who justified his selection at left wing back, I think. Sean Rowan was involved as well. He was my man of the match. I thought he was outstanding throughout the game. I thought he was brilliant. And then a cracking deft finish from 3-goal Ben House, who, if he keeps scoring goals at the rate that he is doing at the moment, will finish the season on 23.
Yeah, it's a great finish by Ben, wasn't it? It was a beautiful goal. And I remember when Michael Skubala came in. There's one thing that he mentioned.
Easy to mix them up.
It's just not, though, is it? Other than both being called Michael, that'd be really offensive, I think, to Michael Skubala with that. One thing he mentioned though when he came in, or a few weeks in, talking about our style, one thing that he wanted us to kind of improve upon was, and I think he called it putting the tent pegs in. So when we get into the opposition half, can we stay in the opposition half and really keep them under pressure? And that was just a prime example of us doing that. So I kind of get what Charlie was getting at. I don't think it was the best goal we've ever scored. But I think in terms of was it under the Skubala era, the goal that we have scored as a team that most closely reflects what Michael's looking for in our attacking play? I think it's probably up there. Yeah, absolutely. Bar Peterborough's clearance off some sustained pressure, it went straight back to us and we put sort of 8 passes together and then scored. We must have had, I think there must have been 20 or 30 passes in that whole kind of sequence, and it was just great to watch. I would love that to be what we work towards, to do more regularly throughout the season against other opposition. But if that's a little glimpse of, from an attacking perspective, what we have in this squad, in addition to our defensive solidity, in addition to our good pressing and our pace and our power, we can play a bit in terms of having some real composed attacking play. I think it was a really good goal, not just because of the situation. It put us a goal up 1-0 away at Peterborough against a team that we haven't beaten for such a long time, but actually it was the type of goal that hopefully we can expect to see more of, and it was just really good to see. As you mentioned, there were so many players involved with it that deserve a mention as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've picked up on Ben. I thought Ben House was excellent. I thought he put in a classic Ben House performance, and the performances he's put in at the beginning of this season are better than the ones that he put in last season, certainly after he came back. So obviously it was an injury hit season. He's already scored more goals now this season than he did last. We're seeing the very best of Ben House. We're also seeing something develop in front of our eyes. We've already mentioned him, but there's a comment come in the section, so it's worth bringing it up. Russell said, I thought Jovan was excellent again. Didn't get a goal, but his centre forward play was perfect. I mean, he missed a chance, but to be fair, it was a half chance. He's made some good runs. I thought he was strong. I thought he put himself about nicely. We said it on the podcast before, and I'll say it again, Freddie and Jovan don't feel like youth team players who have stepped up. I personally, and I'm not a manager, I sit and talk about football. As I said, I wouldn't have started him, but I don't think that there was any indication of the fact that he didn't let us down at all. I thought he had a really strong game, certainly in the first half.
Yeah, I think so too. I think something that's often a little bit overlooked from centre forward play is it's a sort of thing that you notice if it goes wrong. It's not a sort of thing that gets commended which is just link-up play. Just really simple. It seems simple, but it's not. Having the awareness around you, particularly one-touch link-up play. Jovin was really good at playing back to goal and just really kind of soft feet, little layoff pass back to a teammate for the kind of the up, back and throughs for a runner, either wide or often for House. And I just thought he offered some really good overall centre forward play. I am starting to feel that maybe his role isn't necessarily to be an out-and-out centre forward. He's not a Joe Turner type striker. Even, obviously stature-wise that's obvious, but in terms of just style, in terms of is he going to be the sort of player that gets in the 18-yard box, the 6-yard area, and get on the end of things? Probably not. But I think he's going to facilitate a lot for the team. And I would, I don't think if we only judge Jovin on his goal output, that is fair. I think Fred maybe. Eventually, I do think Jovin has probably really surpassed Freddie actually at the moment in terms of the pecking order. I think Fred has the potential to be that goal scorer. And we saw that obviously in his previous 2 loans. He can get himself in the box on the end of things. But I think Jovin has a bit more all-round ability than that. And I think his link-up play is something that often gets overlooked. You don't notice it because it's a one-touch pass and the ball's somewhere else and you don't always notice it. But I think it's really important to mention that, because if centre forward gives a ball away in those situations, and we've seen that a lot with like a Jack Vale, other players that have kind of played up there. Luke Plange,
stop mentioning people like that. Don't. Why? Did you
no, but I'm saying we criticise them.
And you mentioned Jack Vale and Luke Plange.
We criticise those players because you notice it when it goes wrong, but you don't necessarily credit it when just what looks like simple in inverted commas hold up play keeps the ball moving, and I think it's worth commending because I don't think you always notice that with Jovin, and he's really good.
I think I said it last week on the podcast that you can't always judge a striker on goals. It's that simple. You can't. If the team is scoring goals and the team is creating chances, then every part of the machine has a role in that, because you wouldn't create chances against a team like Peterborough unless everybody was on it. If you've got a passenger, it doesn't work, and that's why. For instance, when MK Dons had Mo Isa the other season, he's a player that is a passenger until he gets an opportunity, and they struggled to create chances for him because the other 10 were working essentially on their own. So, I mean, that's really the story of the first half. I don't think that there was a huge amount happened after that. I don't think we didn't need any game management. It was just, we scored the goal. I don't think they had the necessary bounce, particularly from after our goal either. I don't think there was anything. It was we scored, and it was kind of like see out to half time, and we got to half time. No changes at half time, and I thought we came out the better side, and obviously had a really good opportunity to kill it with Ben, which, do you know what? At the time, I was like, that's a sensational save. Looking back, actually, it's gone a little bit wide, but that touch from Ben House to create his second opportunity. I mean, he looks, I keep saying it, but he looks just like that original Ben House. When we first saw him, I can't remember who he came on against. It was before Portsmouth in the, was it in the final days of Michael Appleton, wasn't it? And he came on at home and he just showed this exquisite touch. And I remember that was when I said, well, he's more of a number 10. He's got to be with ball control like that. He's a 10. And he showed that sort of touch again. He's got such good skills. Dare I say, not size-wise, but Matt Reed-esque skills, where you think of him, Ben House, a little bit as a shithouse. He's that sort of striker. He's a shithouse. He'll get on the gun, but he's just got such an exquisite touch. And he was really unfortunate that people were saying that was a golden chance, and it was 0.08, I think, on XG.
Yeah, it wasn't a golden chance, but the angle that we had in the second half, that the goal that we were attacking was a flipping long way away, and it's difficult to get a clear view of a lot of the incidents from where the away fans were situated. So yeah, you see what looks like a long way away. When you see us having the ball in that area and getting a shot away, it feels like a big chance. But yeah, it wasn't a huge chance, and he'd done well to create the space and to get the ball under control himself. I think that's a really good point you make about Ben House, because we know how good he is without the ball. We know how good he is at leading the press, how intelligent he is, how tactically good he is. Again, the numbers kind of prove that he won more tackles yesterday than anyone else on the pitch, and he plays up front. Four tackles that he won on the pitch. No one else won 4. He only attempted 5 as well, so it's a hugely high success rate. Also won the joint most number of ground duels, so that's when he's kind of him and another player are going to try and basically tussling for the ball. He won 6 of his 8 ground duels. No one else won more. Only Sam Curtis won 6, but he contested 10. So Ben's 75% success rate there was the best on the pitch. So defensively, but it's not really defensive. It's kind of it's defending from the front, isn't it? It's running the ball back to give us opportunities. Absolutely outstanding once again in that regard. And sometimes that tarnishes his actual output as a centre forward. Like you say, he scored 3 goals so far this season already surpassed, I think, what he scored last season. Or did he get 2 last year or 3? Yeah, so he's already surpassed what he had last season. So he's turning into a goal scorer as well. He's such an important part, and we've mentioned so many times, haven't we, that we've got such depth in the squad now, particularly in that centre forward position. But for me, it's, even though we have 5 other centre forwards, it's which one plays with Ben House still, even though they all offer something slightly different. Ben House has to play. If he doesn't, we're significantly worse. In my head, at least, even if that's not how it looks on the pitch, it's who partners him, and the way he conducts himself on the pitch means he's likely to get subbed off every game. We're able to do that now, so we can. But yeah, in terms of starting, it's who starts with him rather than which pairing. So
before we move on to their goal, which we're coming on to, Sue has picked up on something. She says, my words, your words, that's me, on post-match about Ethan, eloquently written, he is some sublime player. So for those who don't read or can't read, whichever, this is what I wrote about Ethan Erhahon, and I just really want your feedback on it, Chris, if you agree before we move on. So I've put almost everything positive we did involved Ethan Erhahon at some point. He's utterly exquisite, a man who caresses the ball with love and tenderness, who barks at opponents with anger and disdain. He's a walking contradiction, a man who outwardly projects an uncouth, niggly disruptor, but on the ball becomes careful, balanced and thoughtful. His passing is spot on, his close footwork outrageously measured, if you can be outrageously measured. And whenever we won the ball back, the first pass was often from whoever won it to Erhahon, allowing him to then become the architect. I thought we gave him the ball in some tight areas at times, but tight area is just our opinion of a situation. To Ethan Erhahon, it means nothing. Fair assessment?
Yeah, 100% fair. Yeah, he was excellent yesterday, but we expect him to be excellent in every game now. That's the level of expectation that he has around him. But he's so influential, so important, and as you mentioned, pretty much everything. Everything positive. It's impossible. I'm trying to keep up. I've realised I'm a bloke, aren't I? I can't multiply. I'm trying to read. Don't read
them. They're just for the viewers. Don't read them. They're not for you, Chris. You're all right.
Sorry. No, I mean, the ones on our end. I keep reading them all, and I keep getting distracted. I'm distracting myself. Yeah, everything good went through Ethan Erhahon, and I think we mentioned maybe we missed Paudie O'Connor yesterday. Jacko did a superb job playing central of the 3. I just think we missed Paudie in the team. In his position, Jacko has to play, in my opinion, at the moment. He's on great form. He wasn't far away from man of the match and me either. But the spine that we have, you've got Ben House up top. I just mentioned his qualities. Paudie O'Connor at the back, real leader. And I'd say he's improved even more so this season in the early phases compared to last. And of course, Ethan sitting in between the two of them. I just think that is such a high quality spine for any team in League One would appreciate all 3 of those players in their squad. And then we're peppering everywhere else on the pitch with quality and depth as well. I'm really excited about this season, more so than I probably was, to be honest, even though we didn't win yesterday.
I was just going to say that. We are going on here like we've won the game, but let's be honest, we didn't. And that's because as much as we talk about quality, you've got to acknowledge the quality from Poku to put the ball in the back of the net. Now, it started with Tom Hamer's slip. It's not the blame game, but it just goes, and that's where I've referenced Wigan. It just goes to show you only need one slip at this level against these sorts of teams. You might get away with it against Cambridge and Shrewsbury. You will not get away with it against Peterborough, who are mid-table at the moment, let alone a Wigan, let alone a Huddersfield or a Birmingham or a Wrexham or something like that. It's one slip. There was a passage of play that then went on before they scored, but we gave up possession in an area where you don't want to give up possession. I think any other player on the field in a blue shirt gets that ball, it doesn't go in the back of the net. But Poku is outstanding, and it was just a finish that, do you know what? To be fair, you can't argue with it, can you? It's all right to point at Tom and say he's lost it. And looking at the ratings on the website, people are blaming Tom Hamer. He's got a lower rating than everybody else. I thought he had a decent game. I didn't think he really put a foot wrong. He didn't do anything outstanding, but he didn't put a foot wrong apart from that slip. It's just a moment of real quality.
It was, yeah. And like I say, we're not here to call players out, but I think we're here to be honest. It was a mistake, but it's a mistake that got punished. And like you say, you don't always get those punished against certain teams, but at this level, at the level that we want to be aspiring to, you do get punished for it. And it took a little while to get to Poku, of course, but once he got there, I agree with you. There's probably not a single player on the pitch who was able to do what he did. He had 3 shots yesterday, Poku. All 3 of them were outside the area. Combined total XG of those 3 shots was 0.05. So in terms of the expectation that does go in the net from where it goes in, you normally allow players, not allow, but you're happy for a player to shoot from there rather than kind of cut inside the box. But it's a fantastic finish. But he's the only player on the pitch that has the capability to do that, I think, or sort of to do that regularly. Just, sometimes you've got to take your hat off and say fair play, as much as it was a mistake that gave him the possession high up the pitch. They still had a fair amount to do from that point. And yeah, good goal. He'll be, if Peterborough are not in the playoffs in January, he'll be gone to the Championship, by the way. Yeah. He'll be the next player that goes, and it'll be 2 or 3 million quid again. Yeah, and it'll just keep the conveyor belt rolling for Peterborough because he is head and shoulders above anyone else in that team. And they've still got good attacking players, threatening players, but no one to the level of him. And let's be honest, we've got really good players in our team, but we haven't got anyone that has the skills that he has. Sometimes you've got to say fair play.
For them, and when I say I liked him, I don't mean that. I mean, I disliked him, but he was a good player. The lad Odo from Harrogate, I thought he had a decent game as well. They had that wide threat, just like when they had Adjaboy. I think he's still there actually, but they had Adjaboy. They had the other lad that moved to Coventry, whose name escapes me at the moment. That's where their threat is, and it's not through the centre forward. For the first time, I don't think Peterborough have got a decent centre forward. I haven't seen anything in Ricky J. Jones that I particularly like and would think, well, I'd rather have him over 3 or 4 of our strikers. Now, so they get level. You expect the cauldron to, the atmosphere to ramp up. It really didn't. And we're going to talk about London Road extensively once we've gone through the adverts. The game kind of broke up a little bit after that. I mean, there was the 7 substitutes at one time, which I've never seen at a Football League game before. Darren Ferguson made comment about that, but we'll touch on Fergie's comments later on as well. For me, that just broke up the game completely. And then there was the injury to George Wickens, which again broke the game up. The referee began to blow quite a bit. At the time, really frustrated me. I've watched him back. I don't think he got very much wrong. I think the game just became niggly. I think actually after they scored, it was almost like both teams were trying harder not to lose than to win, but keeping the same approach. So, we were still trying to hit them on the break. They were still trying to get the winner, but there wasn't quite the same level of urgency. I think they had a degree of urgency when they came out. And I think we could have gone on and got 2. And if we had, we would have then maybe even gone on and got more, because I think that they were quite fragile in certain respects. When they got the goal, it just strengthened their mentality. But after the goal, I didn't think there was any result other than a draw, because it just felt like Michael Scabala said, if we can't come to places like this and win, we come and don't lose. And I think when they scored, our mentality became don't lose. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I meant, let's not chase the game. Let's not start pushing it. Let's not try and be over exuberant in what we do. Let's just do what we do it right. And if the chance comes, it comes. And one chance did come, by the way. But I think that from a spectator's point of view, 60 minutes onwards, it really was quite tough, dare I say, at times. Not Stevenage tough, it's just dropped off a bit.
It just didn't get going. I think the subs were interesting because the subs were made on 55-ish minutes, weren't they? I seem to remember Eric Ring breaking down the left-hand side a couple of times. I think that the subs in that initial just 5-minute spell immediately after all the subs, I thought it worked in our favour. I didn't think the game was broken up at all for 5 minutes. I thought we had a bit of a freshness about us. And it was really from, obviously, them scoring and Wickens' injury. I think it was from that point where it really became quite stop-start. I didn't mind it at the time because actually I think at the point that Wickens got injured, Peterborough were actually on top for probably the first time since the first 5 minutes of the game. They were having some real sustained possession in our half, and kind of a bit of territory that we hadn't given up much in the game. And they had very, very, very little after that stoppage in play. So I think that played into our hands. Obviously, we brought Bailey Cadamartri on, who had a much longer run in the team than he has at any point so far yet this season. And I really saw what he can offer for us. I was really impressed with him in flashes in that last kind of half an hour or so of the game. I thought he could be, I could see why he's been brought in. He's going to be a real threat for us, definitely. But it wasn't forced, as you said. It was very much playing on the break for us. And let's not forget, Peterborough have lost their first 2 home games to 0. So the goal they scored was their first goal at home this season. I think there was a determination from them. Again, just don't lose the game. Just make sure you get something on the board at home, and then you can kind of crack on from there. I think both teams will be satisfied with the point. The underlying numbers XG-wise suggest that it should have been a draw. There's a 0.81 to 0.91. Realistically, that's 0-0 or 1-1. So I think a draw is a fair result. I think neither team after 60, 70 minutes or so would have been too fussed about going too, like you say, over exuberant and forcing it too much, because as we've seen, it only takes one slip to get punished. And we almost punished them. By the way, there was a couple of half chances in the second half. Peterborough only had one shot, by the way, in the whole game after they scored their goal. So it was pretty as you were from that point. A couple of flashes, definitely, a couple of interesting moments, but on the whole, there's not a lot to talk about specifically in the last half an hour of the game.
No, absolutely not. I will, just before, we'll go to an ad break if you're listening at home in a moment, but I did just have to pick up on the Wickens injury because I found it really interesting. He was staying on. He was staying on the field until Adam Jackson intervened. And I just think for a player, or that's how it looked. I'm not stating that as fact. I'm not Michael Scabala. I did glance down. G-Cock was getting changed. I looked across, and Adam Jackson was absolutely telling George Wickens, you need to go off. And this is a man, by the way, who has had concussion. I mean, I watched him get taken out by Dan Udo at Shrewsbury, and it was brutal. And I just liked that. I did. And we were praising the other week, Pordy kind of lifting an injured player up and saying, come on, get on with it kind of thing. I almost respect what Adam Jackson was doing a little bit more because this is the goalkeeper. But there is an element of game stake to that as well. And there is an element of we don't want to carry on with a slightly dazed goalkeeper because, as I mentioned in my write-up, some managers, if they see an advantage from a goalkeeper, will pump shots in from anywhere and it may pay off. And certainly I think Darren Ferguson and Poku and players like that would have done that. It was a worrying moment, but just a couple of word, and you'll love this because it's you. Zach G-Cock, actually, I think it's the best thing that could have happened to him, to come on, big pressure right in front of their fans, which obviously they're at either end anyway. Didn't have an awful lot to do, but what he did do, he did impeccably.
Yeah, didn't put a foot wrong, did he, since he came on. As you said, wasn't massively tested, but did what he needed to do really well. And it's such a high pressure situation coming on as a substitute goalkeeper. It really, really is. But I just want to touch on what you said about Jacko because I want to echo it really because it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant to see. When it first happened, I didn't even think Wickens had got a knock in the. I'll be honest, I thought it was a little bit of game management because Peterborough had a bit of pressure. I thought he'd got a knock to the shoulder and he kind of stayed down a little bit. But obviously there was something more serious that we'd missed, and as soon as that became apparent, it was really good to see Jacko just saying, "Look, there's more important things sometimes. Get yourself off, get yourself sorted, and we've got a backup in here." I don't want to say that Paul Ducano didn't do that because the injury that he tried to get, I can't remember who it was now that he tried to get up with him. Yeah, it wasn't a head injury. I think that's the big that's certainly the big difference there. But it's just good leadership, and he was obviously the captain for the day was Jacko. He's been there, done it, got the T-shirt in regards to how George Wickens was feeling in that moment. Just really good leadership. One thing I want to touch on as well, just before we finish on Peterborough, just tactically, I thought was really interesting, mainly because I got it right, and I like to let everyone know. We played 4-4-2 yesterday, out of possession particularly, back four to counter Peterborough's. Oh, thank you for that. Counter attack Peterborough's shape. Scoop, I mentioned that in his post match as well that we changed our shape a little bit to counter them. So I think we can see that now and then throughout this season. Yeah. We always have the same shape or very similar shape going forward, but out of possession we were very much two banks of four, and that was interesting to see that we do have some flexibility to be able to do that. You've got to credit the players to be able to have a different shape in and out of possession. The higher we go in the levels, the more prominent that is. But in League One, there's not many teams that are able to do that quite so strongly. So that was really good to see that we've got that flexibility.
Which of our players yesterday were most impressive in terms of being able to switch, in your opinion? Are we looking at Dom Jeffries, Sean Rowan? Was it very much down the left again, and the right was pretty much the same as?
It was both flanks really. So Tendai played right back. This is only when we didn't have the ball, of course. When we had it, he was still our main width going forward. But Tendai was right back, which is more than comfortable doing. Sean shifted across and was very much left back. I think that was primarily so he could be one-on-one against Poku, because Sean's our best one-on-one defender. Poku is of course their best player, full stop, and really good at 1v1 dribbles. And by the way, the fact that Poku only had 3 shots in the game, all 3 of them were outside the box, only had an XG of 0.05. Okay, one ridiculously good one went in. But in terms of Sean Rowan, only allowing Poku to have that, I think was really, really, really good. If we didn't play that back 4, you're asking our left wing back then to play 1v1 against Poku, and I don't think that you get the same result then. So Jeffries was almost like a left midfielder out of possession, and then Bayliss was actually right midfield out of possession as well. And I think that offered Tom Bayliss, that is probably the squarest peg in the roundest hole doing that, but I don't think he did anything wrong at all. We didn't see a lot of threat at all from that side of Peterborough. So yeah, I don't think there's anyone in particular. I just think it's the unit which is really impressive, because as soon as one part of that unit's taken out or doesn't do something correctly, then you see that gap. So to be able to kind of shift to a 3 and then a 4 at different phases in the game, I think that's just really intelligent play. It shows a good sign of good coaching, and it's good for the future because it shows that we could be tactically flexible.
Dare I say, I thought it reflected on Dom Jeffries very, very well, because Tendai's played right wing back, right back. Sean Rowan plays left centre half, left back. They are comfortable with making those changes. Dom Jeffries came here as a central midfielder and had to go from a left wing back to left midfield out of possession. So I think in terms of what we learned about the players yesterday, I think we learned an awful lot actually about Dom Jeffries. I thought he looked incredibly comfortable. Thought he had a really good game until he went off. There was 1 or 2 little things that I saw him do, just the way that he interacts with opposition players at times, and he really impressed me. Maybe it's because when we were attacking in the first half, he was over that side and you can see quite clearly what's going on. Do you know what I mean? But he really impressed me, and I think it reflects on him. When I say more so, I don't mean that he did the role better. I mean that it's a more alien role to him compared to the other players that had to drop in and out. Anyway, we will now, if you're listening at home, we'll go to an advert where I tell you that Sky Sports are good, apparently, I think, or somebody else might come on and try and sell you something. If you're watching online, we'll just be a little bit awkward for a minute or 2 and then come back. So there we go. 43-17. Just one thing while we're online.
One thing I forgot to say. Bloody hell, never mind.
Never mind. Adam Bull says, am I going to call my mouse Ethan? I'm not planning on keeping it, Adam, if I'm entirely honest. We're planning on breaking its neck using a trap, because it's actually huge and it goes in. I don't want to. We put the humane trap out. We were watching it come out from under the cooker, stretch its body over, pull little bits of crumbs and get out the humane trap without even setting it off.
I think you got to credit that. That's, sometimes you've got to take your hat off. Well done. He's outsmarted me. You can stay. Well,
you come up here Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday and make sure that him staying means that he doesn't chew through all of my things. Anyway, we'll come back in 3, 2, 1. Brilliant. So that's covered the game. Just a couple of things that we wanted to touch on. First of all, we wanted to touch on Darren Ferguson's post-match comments, mainly because it's really nice to hear him bitter. No mention of us winning the cup final this year, which he mentioned when we drew 0-0 last time out, because it was their cup final. That's why we sold out the end. I'm frustrated as it's another disappointing result at home, said Ferguson. We're having a struggle at home as we're not creating enough chances, and it's my job to find a solution to what is becoming a problem. We've been accustomed to creating far more chances. The only threat today was Kwame, that's Poku, and he showed that with a wonderful goal. Credit to the players, though, as before this season, we've gone behind and not managed to get anything out of the game, whereas today we've managed to get something. I've kept my feedback to the players positive, and this is interesting. I said we've managed to get something out of a game against the team and make it obvious why they don't lose games away from home. They foul, they slow it down like they are entitled to.
Wow. I mean, we do commit some pretty smart tactical fouls from time to time, which I like to see.
They were the ones getting booked for the shirt pulling.
Yeah, there's only one booking for us in the whole game, and that was Tendai kicking the ball on the pitch, just them taking a quick throw, which I liked. I think it's by the letter of the law, by the way, absolutely is a yellow card. But you don't normally see it given in that regard. But you know, can't criticize the referee for actually following the rules. But I quite liked it. It meant Tendai was on a yellow for the rest of the game, and I thought he managed himself really well in that regard, by the way.
Sorry, you did criticise the referee for following the rules against Stevenage. You criticised him for sending off Pordy O'Connor when he was definitely a bookable offence. And you just said now you can't criticise the referee for following the rules.
Stop using my own logic against me, please.
Stop saying things right. Right, so we're going to move on now, because that wasn't the only talking point of the day. But I've started a couple of messages that came through earlier. So Steve Race has put good game, but the first time I felt uncomfortable around other Lincoln fans. Steve Barton, good friend, did the walk with us. With you on that, Steve. Now, I have got lots of other messages from people. So to start from the top, London Road's not a bad ground. That new away end is dangerous, and that's all there is to it. It's cramped. The seats are dated. That in itself isn't a major problem. It's £27 for what is seats that were probably put in 1950s. The toilets are a pinch point. They're wide enough for one person to go down. That's men and women down the same aisle, and then people going in and out. I think it creates a potential crush point. I thought the stewarding, whilst they were polite enough, was inadequate. People were at the end of the game were standing, waiting for people to come out of the toilet, blocking the way in. It was just really, really uncomfortable. It's not fit for purpose, and how Peterborough can get away with putting any supporters in their home or away without some form of modifications is beyond me. And it's only the second time I've felt at a ground that if there was an emergency as people were coming in or out of the ground, it would be a serious incident. And the other place was Hillsborough. Because Hillsborough's concourse and alleyways are just as bad. I don't know if maybe 50 or 100 years ago, people were just smaller. I don't know if that's what it is, but I can't understand that one person width walkway to the toilets. Absolutely baffled me. It really did. But there were wider concerns, unfortunately. I've had numerous messages of people mentioning fights breaking out between Lincoln fans, people returning to their seats and find other people in their seats. And I understand that one person got whether it's a broken nose or a bloody nose from a supporter who was not happy that he was being asked to move. I moved from my seat because 3 people came to sit down, not in the singing section. So, we'll come on to that in a minute, but they weren't in the singing section. Somebody was in their seats. They were more or less told to bugger off. So I actually moved and stood up right near the back to allow 3 people to sit together. Now it opens up a discussion, and I'll put my opinion across first. If you've booked a singing section ticket, I don't expect you to have to be in the seat that's on your ticket, because a singing section is you kind of all stand together. I get it. I think it should be one person in one place, by the way. You had people standing on chairs and all sorts in the singing section, but I understand that. If you're in the area where I was, which was row Y, block B, away from the singing section, if my seat ticket says Y24, I expect to be in Y24. I don't expect to come and see somebody sat there and go, well, that's my seat. And he goes, well, no, it's sit anyway. It's not. I understand that in a singing section. I don't think you should buy singing section tickets if you intend to sit down, because it doesn't happen at away games. Whether that's an unwritten rule or not, it doesn't. I'm not going to condemn the pyro, because whilst I know that it's a bad thing for many people, I can understand it from an atmosphere point of view. But the behaviour that I'm hearing about from individuals, not en masse, 1,650 people, 1,640 of them, I'm sure were fine. But you can't be treating your other fans. It used to be self-policed when there was a larger 617 presence. I think there was a degree of self-policing, but it has been a problem at times. It's going to be a real problem for Peterborough when the likes of Birmingham come through, I think, as well.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think we agree on this on the whole. Firstly, on London Road itself, I 100% agree with you in terms of it. And you I don't know if you said it in jest or not, but I actually agree with you. In the car on the way home yesterday, you said there's a fine line between character and unfit for purpose.
Yep.
And that stand has got a lot of character, but it isn't fit for purpose. I think it crosses the line negatively in that regard, which potentially was part of the reason that caused some of the issues that there was. I actually think if it wasn't so easy to book tickets together these days, then I get it. If you just kind of ring up, say, "Oh yes, can I have 2 tickets for Peterborough away, please?" And then the 10 of you all want to stand together, and everyone knows if it's in the singing section, you just kind of find your way there. If that's fine. But on the website, you can book tickets together, and you can link your accounts. So, for example, me and Joe wanted to sit next to each other yesterday. We obviously sat differently to you because we booked them at a different time to you, but we could have quite easily booked 3 together easily, all at the same time on one booking, and the tickets would have been 3 in a row. So it's for me that it's a little bit of entitlement to think that you could do that, because it's just a lack of effort. Just take the time, spend an extra 2 minutes when you're booking your ticket to make sure they're all together, and it doesn't solve. And all these problems are solved. So there's a system already in which
devil's advocate. I couldn't sit with you yesterday, even though I wanted to, because I ordered my tickets later. So that is a situation if we were more organized.
But that's
it's a different thing, though, isn't it?
Go to sit next to each other. Then we didn't book it at the same time. Why should we expect to? We knew it was going to be.
No, we shouldn't expect to. We didn't.
Exactly. So why? That's fine. Yeah. It's an entitlement to think, oh well, I didn't sit next to my friends because I booked them at a different time. Well, book them at the same time then. And if you can't, then accept how it is and enjoy your away day with the people that you're around. We're all Lincoln fans all together. It's sometimes nice to sit next to other people. You get talking to people that you don't already know. I hate entitlement, and I don't want to come this to come across as just criticizing Lincoln fans or people's kind of free speech or anything. I just really hate it when there's a system in place that allows you to actually solve the problem that's there. If there wasn't a solution, I understand why situations arise, but there's a solution already in place, and it's just about a bit of respect for people around you, isn't it? And it's, without wanting to sound too harsh, just don't be a dick. That's it. Yeah. That's in the simple terms. Just don't be a dick. And if you can live your life by that rule, then I don't think many bad things happen on the whole.
I think John's got a good point here as well. He says having a pyro landing on your ground next to you is not nice. See, that's where I draw the line. If you're in the singing section and somebody lets off I wouldn't do it. I understand people get in trouble with it, but it's kind of part of that ultras thing, and I'm hesitant to kind of back it or whatever. But I don't condone it, but I understand that if you then throw it, you're an idiot. Because that's simple. Because there are people elsewhere who have booked away from a singing section for a certain reason. Singing section isn't people that want to sing, just that. It's people who want to stand up, dance about, sing. They want to be closer in. It's the old school terracing. I understand that. And I wouldn't call it an ultra section because that's kind of an Italian thing, but it is that kind of slightly more hardcore section. When I used to go as a kid, I used to be right down the front of the railway end with my chin on the little granite wall. And up at the back near the corrugate thing, there was a group of guys who would stand there and they'd bang on it and they'd sing and they'd F and they'd Jeff and all that sort of stuff. And that's it. That's that kind of section now. And you get one at every single ground. But I just find it a real shame. And people will say, well, why have you done it then? I find it a real shame that we're here talking about this now, but there was enough incident for it. You know, when I'm watching the game and I see a bloke walking down, shouting, wanting somebody to come down because they've punched his son because his son's tried to get back into his seat at half time and hasn't been able to. And a fellow Lincoln fan, in inverted commas, has punched him in the face. For me, that's really, really frustrating. And I'll be honest, if we're in the same division as Peterborough next season, 90% certain that I won't go if we're in that stand again, just because I wouldn't want. I was lucky because I was on the very back row, but I was on the back row they sold, but then there was another row behind me where they hadn't sold the seats. So I was able to step back and had quite a lot of space and quite a good view, and I was able to move around. I got stood behind Dean Wagstaff, had a chat. It was great. But if I'd got a seat in the middle somewhere and I'd turned up, we got in good time, and someone was in my seat and we started having an argument, that would be a real issue for me. And as Steve Race said, here, no action from any stewards, no stewards seemingly in the block. And you look at away fans at our ground in the Stacey West, there's a steward at the back. And okay, people go, oh, they're party poopers, blah, blah, blah. They're not, they're there for safety. What if somebody in the middle of that block had actually had a medical incident? And I know they'll go, oh, it's a NAMBY state and all that sort of stuff. But the stand is not acceptable or suitable for the number of supporters that were in it. And the behaviour of a very, very small minority of our supporters was absolutely not acceptable. And, I'm saying that I can look at my phone now and I've had a WhatsApp from somebody. Literally, it's the second one down. I didn't enjoy today, and that was because of our fans. They ruined it for me. When we scored, it was horrendous. I was praying we wouldn't score again because people were actually throwing themselves into the rows in front. couldn't get downstairs to the toilets because it was full of people standing in the way. I've had an email, I've had a private message from, and I won't say who it was, but somebody that you and I spoke to before the game, not Jack Mulhall, who we did speak to before the game, basically saying the same thing. I can't actually find it now. 4 or 5 different people. I think that's really sad. I think, and we saw it a little bit at Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United, didn't we? Right in front of us. It was me, Matt, and Dad. 2 Lincoln fans punching each other in the front row in an argument over standing up or sitting down. I find that disappointing. It's not just us, but I find it disappointing.
No, I'm guessing it happens at every club now and then. But I just, you like to think that we're a little bit better than that. Like it just comes down to just having a bit of respect for the people around you and just treating everyone else as you'd hope to be treated yourself. I don't think that's difficult myself. I agree. If you book a ticket in the singing section, I think you should be clued up enough to know what that generally involves. But everywhere else, I think you should have a bit of respect and just understand that everyone enjoys football in a different way. The atmosphere was brilliant. I think it's worth saying the atmosphere was absolutely outstanding, and that is from all the fans that were involved, of course. And we really pride ourselves on that. So I think if we can just behave in a manner that in a way that we can be proud of, as much as we can make the noise that we're proud of, then we'll be okay. But let's just hope we do.
And look, on the other hand, we were in the pub. Was it the Checkers or the Charter or something before the game? Wonderful atmosphere, fans mixing, sun was out, bit of beer, bit of food, absolutely brilliant. And for me, that's what football's about. And I'm not talking about everybody, arms around each other, hugging, not singing nasty songs or saying nasty things. I'm not about that. I love it when you start biting football in a library or whatever, and they're having a go at Sid, and that's nice. I even like it when some fat tosser's moving forward and he's pointing to someone specific, going, "You outside." It's not going to happen. If they meet outside, 9 times out of 10, nothing happens. And we're not the only team. I've seen videos today of Swansea fans fighting with each other. And do you know what? It's funny, isn't it? How I like that, not being a dick, having respect. It's funny how quickly, and I might be controversial saying this, cocaine robs you of having respect for other people. And I think, if I'm honest, I do think that that's part of the problem. Alcohol, yeah, to a degree. But I think that there's a minority within that kind of base that for that's an issue. And do you know what? I'm all for passion, and I'm not for let's all sit down and let's clap at the right times and happy clappers and all that, because that's not what football is. And I have different away days. We have away days like yesterday where it's fairly muted. We have a couple of beers. It's friends having a chat. We go to the game. I don't like sitting down. I was happy to stand up, all that sort of stuff. And then we have Andy's bus away days where you're drinking in St Ives at 10 o'clock in the morning and the game passes as a blur. I get it. There's different away days and different people experience things differently. But honestly, I didn't feel threatened yesterday. I didn't feel any. We didn't even see it till we got back in the car. My comment was about the stand not being adequate.
Agreed.
But then the number of people that have then come back and said what they actually saw is just a little bit concerning. And like John there, who said about having pyro landing at his feet. John's been going to games 60s, 70s. He went through that whole hooligan era, and he said you don't expect quite to feel that level of threat anymore. But then on the nicer side of things, Michael Vanderson, apart from that, it was nice to see you, Gary, of course. Nice to see you too. I stayed true to my comment when I said you were looking nice and healthy, because normally if somebody looks at you and goes, "You're looking healthy," it's either that you're looking a little bit fat or you are actually looking in good shape. And I did actually ask him which one it was. So it was because I was looking in good shape.
Good stuff. Someone spoke to me on the way out yesterday. I didn't ask your name, and I feel bad about it now. And it was all said in good jest, and it was just quite funny. He just tapped me on the shoulder and says, "You're not as tall as I thought you were on the podcast." I was like, and I'm taking it as a compliment because I just like the fact that people thought I was taller in the first place.
Is it because my camera's a bit different, so I look shorter than you now?
I don't know. Maybe who knows? But
I'm
not blessed with height.
Really quickly, just moving on from that now. It was Steve Race who said that, Steve. So really quickly, I just wanted to pick up on something in the Sheffield Star, where they're talking about how Sheffield Wednesday will still treat Bailey Cadamarteri as their own player throughout, and I quite like this. And what I liked was the chance at the end for Cadamarteri, because he's been feeding on scraps a little bit, but there was a ball forward, Sean Rowan, naturally. And as it came forward, it's the way he rolled it across his chest. He took out Cipriano and then he was gone. Okay, he's ended up a little bit wide, and it's a relatively routine save for Jed Steer. But I think it's quite interesting. I mean, I really like Danny Roll, by the way, the Sheffield Wednesday manager. I don't know, there's something about him that feels good. And so he said this, and I'll just get your comment before we go. I know we're over the hour. But we have someone like Neil Thompson who has a good relationship with the player. I think he might have once been Boston's manager. We spoke 2 weeks ago about what I want to see from the club and my coaches around me, and that we really have an eye on our loan players, and that means going to games, meeting him personally, speaking to him, being in contact with the club, looking at clips and getting a feeling. This is about Bailey Cadamarteri. We must help him, teach him from the outside. He's still our player, and it would make no sense to say he is away so we don't look at him. This step is important to help him, and of course it's important for us to use him in the future. It's just a really responsible approach to management, and one that you probably don't see an awful lot. Like Michael Appleton never really watched our players. We stayed in contact with them, but he sent them out on loan, and he goes, "Oh, we're here and they're doing well." I think it's a really important approach, and it could benefit us as well, because Bailey will feel that he's achieving something at his parent club, not just out on loan with us.
Absolutely right, but I agree 100%. By the way, but I think we mentioned this last week on Thursday. Sorry, when we was at the fans forum, and we do that all the time with every single one of our loan players gets watched and have that human touch, and are very much part of things here as well. Just made that abundantly clear. Him and Mark Tracy have a big role to play in that. Mark Tracy's official job title has changed this season, by the way, from Chief Scout to Chief Scout and Loan Manager, because of how much of a part of his role is staying in touch with the loan players, because they are part of the football club. They all have a role to play. They're on a pathway that gets them into the first team here. That's the whole point of it. So it's great to see, but they're only doing what we're doing.
They are. Howard Franks here has just said, has anyone mentioned the stat that the Imps have not lost a game away from home in the last 14 matches, a club record that goes back to 1944? Now, I thought that it was 12 matches, so I might be wrong. And it matches a record from the early 80s. I believe that if we avoid defeat against bottom club Cambridge United in 2 weeks' time, that will actually beat the club record. I may be wrong. Howard may be right there. It's a little bit unclear and uncertain. Anyway, I think that'll just about do it, won't it?
Absolutely. It's a very good away form, no matter what. Do I have anything I need to plug? Oh, actually, no, it's not to plug. Where have I put it? Oh, no. Never mind. I'll see if I can remember. Steph's mum got me a present recently. She got me a book with football's strangest games and Lincoln City feature in it from a match in the 30s where we won 9-1 at the Shea away at Halifax Town. We scored 6 goals in quite quick succession. I'm going to give you multiple choice here. Did we score 6 goals in 21, 31, or 36 minutes?
I thought I knew this. I'm going to say 21 minutes.
It was 21 minutes, yeah. I can't remember much about it because I haven't got the book in front of me. But yeah, we scored 6 goals in 21 minutes to win 9-1 away at the Shea. Isn't that excellent?
I'll take that at Cambridge. We often, wouldn't you just? Although, to be fair, one of the last times we went to Cambridge, we scored 5 goals, didn't we? And won 5-1. Anthony Scully got 3 assists and 2 goals. I also have a football strangest matches, and oddly enough, Lincoln feature in that as well. And it's not that game; it's the FA Cup tie with Coventry that was postponed 15 times or something like that.
Wow!
So,
why?
Weather.
No.
There's an article on it on the site. I thought you read all my articles. So it was postponed 15 times because of the weather, and when we eventually played, I think we lost something like 5-1, and it was an FA Cup third round game, and I think we played it in March. That's how long it is. And I went through the newspapers and documented every single time that it had been cancelled with the headlines and stuff for an article a few years ago. So it always gets rolled out. It's the most postponed fixture in British FA Cup or in FA Cup history.
Incredible.
So, there we go. So we are talking records. We are talking Peterborough United. And in a moment, we won't be talking much again at all. We still haven't beaten Posh since 2006, but we have scored a goal against them, which is the first in 5 games. We've been talking like it was a win. And actually, when we came away with a point, it felt a little bit deflated, which is a real indication of how far we have come. It's not without its problems, but one thing is for certain, we're 6 games in now and the season really does feel like it's underway. We're moaning about things, we're praising things. It doesn't feel like it's a brand new campaign. We now push onwards to Wigan at home. Hopefully you will join us on Thursday for our preview. In the meantime, thank you for listening to the longest running Lincoln City podcast, the Stacey West. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.